been flipping pages since I could remember. That told me I had to be within the lines of 2 degrees and 9 to 5. And I've been working after work since last September. Working after work, yeah. I stay up late on the weekdays. I never tell when we say. I never wanna look back and wish I could have been. I've never got no regret. The hours I've been putting in. So take a chance on faith. Your mind's a bonus, please. So take a chance, take a chance on faith. So take a chance on faith. So take a chance. I never wanna look back. Take a chance on faith. Take a chance on faith.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to a video, and today we're going to be doing a pretty highly user requested video. We're going to be going over my video settings and how I edit video. So mainly in question for this guy, we're going to be using the GoPro Hero Session 5 and my newly added GoPro Hero 7 Black. So these are pretty much two of the most popular FPV cameras around. I know the GoPros, they just produce such good quality. So I'm just pretty much going to run over my settings for these and then how I edit them on my computer just to make things look better and just sort of the decisions I'm thinking as I'm flying around. So this video is more aimed at a little bit, I guess, cinematic flying. Obviously these tips also apply to freestyle, etc. But for this video, we're pretty much going to be looking mostly at the Hero 7 Black, since I've moved to that for freestyle flying. I'm still using the Hero 5 Session for racing because this thing is a great form factor. It's a lot lighter than the Hero 7. And it's just a tank, so this thing works great for racing. But as you can see, I don't have an ND filter on here, and I run it a little more stock because it doesn't really matter for racing too much. So for the Hero 7 Black, you can see I'm just going to start off. I have an ND16 filter on here, and now I change this depending on the light. If it's very bright out, I'll use the 16, which is the darkest I have. I also have a 8 and a 4. These are the Telesin filters from Amazon. It comes in a pack of 3 for about $32, so not too bad. There are other ones that I think they're called Polar Pro or something. They're like all glass, really expensive. I don't know if they're any better, but it's like twice the price. So these have worked perfectly fine for me, so I'm gonna be sticking with them. But yeah, that was just a quick intro. So let's go ahead and get into the camera. I need to turn on my Wi-Fi so I can pull up the app because I'll show you the settings in there because it'll look a lot better than on the touch screen here. Alright, so here we have my workbench. I'm just going to go ahead and go into the settings here. So obviously aspect ratio, I use 16:9. For this, I was filming some cinematic stuff here in 4K 30 there in Super View. That is my recommended and preferred resolution and field of view. That's really nice about the Hero 7 Black is it can do this with the Hero 5 Session. You can only do 2.7K 30 Super View. So if you depending on what video editor you had, you could either upscale that to 4K or downscale it to 1080. So this is really nice that you could do native 4K and not have any troubles with that. Video stabilization, here is where it differs between the Session and the Hero. If you're using the Session, I would always recommend turning that off. It does not work well. But with the Hero 7, it's actually the Hyper Smooth. So depending on what your goals are, you can leave this on or off. For cinematic flying, I actually turn it off because I try to stay really smooth on the sticks. A lot of my videos have absolutely no stabilization in them. So it can turn out a lot better and you don't get the cropped field of view. So that is nice. Pro Tune, this is definitely something that you want to have on. And now for shutter speed here, this is something that definitely matters. It comes stock on auto, but I put it on 1/60th. This was when I was filming at about sunset with the ND16 filter on, and now I'm not a wizard with shutter speed and all this stuff. I just know what I've read online, and this basically determines what kind of motion blur you have. If you set it to 1/30, you get really, really high motion blur. And then if you set it to 1/240, you get really, really low motion blur and it's really jittery. So usually I stick around 30 or 60 depending on the daylight. Here, ISO min, this is pretty much just how much light it lets in the sensor. If it's super bright out, you want to leave this down at 100. If it's sort of dusk, I turn it to 800, like getting pretty dark out. But I have really good luck pretty much leaving it with 100 there for the min. And then for the limit, I leave that at about 800 so it can range between there. White balance, this is actually something that's pretty important for me. When I first started using my Hero 7, it was going really hot and really cold temperatures on me, just all over the place with the white balance on auto. So I actually went out and did a couple tests and determined 5000 Kelvin is the best setting for me there. It keeps it nice, consistent, and easy to color grade later. Sharpness, I prefer high. Some people prefer medium, and then they increase it a little bit in post, but I don't have access to that with my video editor, so I leave it on high. It's how I like it. Color, you kind of want to leave this on flat if you're going to be editing in post. It just allows it to capture a lot more detail, especially in the shadows, etc. And then you can go ahead in your editor and just play with it how you want. So I do recommend flat. And then that's pretty much it. So my settings for the Hero 5 session are very, very similar. Just I use 1080-60 instead of 4K30 because I'm using this for racing, etc. And I obviously don't put fragile ND filters on for racing. So that was a quick rundown of my settings for the Hero 7 Black. So let's go ahead and get on the computer and I'll show you what I do when I'm editing my stuff. Alright, so here we are over in iMovie, and yes, I do use iMovie to edit my videos. I know a lot of you are going to be like, oh, use Adobe Premiere, or oh, use DaVinci Resolve, or any of these free programs. I've tried them. I just don't have the time. I just don't feel like investing the time in learning them. iMovie works perfectly fine for me, and it seems like it's been doing pretty well so far in the videos, so I'm just going to stick with it, probably until this computer dies, and then I may get something like Final Cut or Adobe, I don't know. But for now, it's what I'm using, iMovie, so get over it. So what I'm showing you here probably won't apply to a bunch of people. I just sort of wanted to go through my thought process, not necessarily exactly how I'm doing the things. So first we have this clip here. This is actually from quite a bit ago. If we scrub through here, you can see this was at a church here, and this is sort of the video that a lot of you guys were asking about my settings on because of how good the footage looked here. So right off, what I do when I first look at clips, before I cut it into anything or add any music and split it up, I make sure I color grade it. That way everything is consistent. So I'm going to go up here. Pretty much with all my footage, I increase the contrast a little bit, decrease the shadow or the highlights, and increase the shadows. And this has to do with shooting on flat GoPro color. In the settings I do, it just leaves a lot of shadow detail, so I'm sort of bringing that back out. And then I increased the saturation here. You can see this is a little saturation slider. Very, very basic tools in iMovie, but they get the job done. And I tend to like a pretty high saturation and a little bit of warmth there. And then I'm just going to mute the audio for this. And yeah, that's pretty much all I do for clips like this. So this is 1080p 60 here, shot on the Hero 5 session, not with an ND filter. You can see it just looks really well, and I find a lot of things that make footage like this look good, especially just like the pavement and the white sky and the buildings. When you're shooting only grass, like in a race, it's just really hard, but when it has a couple different things like this, like we have the pavement and the bright blue sky color, as well as the sidewalks here, it really, really brings the footage out better. And a lot of you are probably also wondering about like bitrate and compression. I export all my stuff at 26.6 megabits per second. YouTube, I think, encodes at like 12 for 1080-60, so it's definitely not high enough, which is why you get a lot of artifact in YouTube. But when you think about how much video is uploaded, it's not that unreasonable. You know, they have to save file size somewhere. But it might be possible. I've heard that channels with over 10,000 subscribers do get a higher bitrate. I'm not sure if that's true. But some people were saying my stuff looks better than theirs uploaded. I'm not sure, but these are just the settings I use. So moving on, next we have some X-Class footage here. So pretty much the same thing. This was shot with the Hero 7. You can see it's a little bit, we have a lot more detail in the shadows here over in the pole shed. Hopefully you can see that. So I pretty much do the same exact stuff, just decrease shadow a little bit. This is a shadow tool. It just gives a little more pop and then just a little bit of saturation, and that's literally it. You can go ahead and drag the audio down. This was shot in 2.7K 60, but once again, I'm showing it everything in this video in 1080-60 since that's my standard upload format. But yeah, there's really not too much editing that I do to my videos in terms of the color grading. Once again, iMovie is very basic. Now, lastly, we get on to this part here. This is actually a clip I took the other night with my freestyle quad. this is a little bit interesting because you can see the sun is pretty much set here, so this is dark. I'm using the ND16 filter, the settings I showed you all in the beginning of the video. So here I try to find, when I'm color grading this stuff, I try to find a point where we're at sort of a neutral position with the camera, or where I'm trying to make the shot look best at. So that's kind of in between this transition from shadow to light over here. So I just kind of adjust how I want things to look over here. I'm going to bring the brightness up just a little bit since this was a little darker, and then just a tad of saturation and temperature there. And then if we let this play back, this was filmed in 40 frames per second, but 4K. So you can see I have the 1/30th shutter speed here. Hopefully you can see there's a lot more motion blur. And as I make this turn here into the sun, this is absolutely gorgeous. This is the exact type of shot I'm looking for. Very smooth. We have the motion blur. I think it looks great. All is nice. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, unfortunately, this flight here, if you've seen my Instagram, I posted this clip. The 4-in-1 ESC that I was using, the Flywoo, I had some prototype capacitors on there. That's what they told me, and they caught on fire, and the quad went down here into the woods. Luckily, it wasn't in the water because that's where I was heading next, but that just is a little bit unfortunate. But I was able to find it, and we are working on fixing the problem with that ESC. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for this video on my GoPro settings and how I edit my videos. I do the same exact thing for these types of videos. Just go ahead and cut stuff and move stuff around. It's pretty simple with iMovie. You can do all kinds of stuff. I know you guys are probably cringing so hard. But yeah, that's going to be it for the video. There'll be links in the description to the GoPros as well as the ND filters if you are interested. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.